Now you can listen to Wine and Dine Radio while shopping at the grocery store or your neighborhood wine merchant. Wine and Dine Radio can be heard using your wireless internet on your cell phone. You're listening to iWineRadio. iWineRadio is a production of Food Tastes Better with Wine on the web at iWineRadio.com. Hey guys, I thank you for listening to iWineRadio, and we are still the only wine channel on iTunes Radio. If you go look under iTunes radio icon and scroll down to News and Talk Directory, and it's listed alphabetically, click on that and the stream comes up immediately. iWineRadio.com, where you can find links to individual guests. And if anyone's interested in advertising or becoming an underwriter or sponsor, please contact us at iWineRadio.com. We really, really appreciate your support. The more support we get, the more conversations I can have with fascinating people around the world, including you. If you have a story to tell that you'd like to share on iWine Radio, go to iWineRadio.com and contact us, and we'll go from there.
Hi, my name is Mary Gorman-McAdams. I'm an Irish-born Master of Wine living and working in New York City. I teach about wine. I teach the Wine Spirits Education Trust classes. I write about wine. Many of you may be familiar with the website thekitchen.com, which is part of the Apartment Therapy family of websites where I've been writing since 2008. And you can find out more about me there, or at the International Wine Center website, the wine school where I teach, or at the Institute of Masters of Wine website.
Well, I really must thank wine publicist Donna White for setting me up into meeting our next guest on Wine and Dine. So we're going to really devote the hour to talking about champagne and sparkling wines, and this is just I'm tickled pink that I actually have this opportunity to meet Mary Gorman-McAdams, not only because she is Irish, but because she's a master of wine and a female to boot. And she's talking to us today from New York City, where she lives and works. She earned her MW degree in 2011. And as she will tell us the story, Mary Ewing Mulligan, really the first Master of Wine female in the United States, was her mentor. And Mary, I thank you so very much for joining us today on Wine and Dine. But could we start, please, by giving listeners a little bit of a background? You, before you were so enamored with and devoted to wine as a career, your expertise was truly in business and marketing.
It was, yes. Well, firstly, I'm delighted to be here on the show with you, Lynn. Thank you very much for having me here. Yes, prior to my life in wine was something that I enjoyed, as any consumer would. I was involved in marketing, in the technology, software side of things, so very much in the industrial, hard side of marketing rather than consumer marketing.
Okay.
And, you asked, how do I come from marketing to wine? I often say, how did I get from a farm in rural Ireland into wine in New York City?
Oh, yes.
Probably the seminal moment in terms of wine, and particularly champagne, was in 1984. I was on my third year of my undergraduate studies, and I had to do an exchange in France or Germany, so I chose France and spent a year in Lyon with three other Irish students. And within a couple of months, we discovered Cristal champagne.
Oh.
This is back in 1984, when before it was sort of discovered by all of the celebrities, so it was priced quite differently. And there was something about the taste of Cristal, which is the tête de cuvée of Louis Roederer, that really sort of stayed in my mind. And since then, I've always had not just a passion for wine, but for particularly champagne. I came back to Ireland, finished my studies, became involved in working for various corporations, initially an American corporation. And then after graduate school, I moved to Paris. I was working for the Irish Trade Board, the Irish Export Board, again, working with technology companies, software companies. But I had the opportunity to live in Paris for 5.5 years and be paid for it. And it was during that time that I traveled around and really became fascinated by wine and came back to Ireland. And at that stage, I realized, I became aware of the Wine and Spirits Education Trust programs that, gosh, this is something that I can study. But I still thought this is a passion, it's a hobby. And I had taken the first two levels, at the time it was called the intermediate and the advanced certificate. And meanwhile, back in Ireland, I met my husband, fell in love, got married. And in 2002, we moved to New York because of his work. And that was the perfect segue, the real sort of timing to actually say, okay, I can leave the old world behind. And we moved to New York just as I was about to start studying the Wine and Spirits Education Trust diploma. And that brings me to where I met Mary Young-Mulligan.
Okay.
Day one, I sort of crumbled up on the doorstep of the wine school and said, well, here I am. I'd like to start diploma. And by the way, if I can help out or do anything. So, because I could legally work in the United States. So I started working at the Wine Center and studying, and Mary really became a very good friend, a mentor. And when I finished my diploma, she really encouraged me to go forward and pursue MW studies, which I did. And throughout my time studying, Mary was my, again, friend, coach, mentor, all the way through those blood, sweat, and tears, as I would say, and obviously support from my husband and now 9-year-old son, to eventually gaining my MW in 2011. So it sort of was a circuitous route from marketing, technology, software to really discovering and realizing that life is too short to not do something that you're really passionate about.
But there is a good deal in the MW studies and exam that has to do with the business side of wine. So I would think that your undergraduate and graduate degrees devoted to business and marketing really helped you in that regard.
They did. And it was funny because I'm sort of out of that sort of the hard business world for now sort of over 10 years. And I was very sort of, not surprised, but sort of flattered that when I gained my MW, they also, there are a number of prizes that are awarded by various sponsors. And Erasuriz, the Chilean wine producer, gives an award for the person who did best in the business of wine paper, and I received that prize. So it was wonderful sort of endorsement that despite having sort of moved over to the wonderful world of wine, that I still had some business skills. So that was very exciting to think that, okay, my past life hasn't been all wasted. I can still understand business. So that was really nice.
Now, let me ask you, this paper that you're talking about, did that have to do with champagne also? Was this your dissertation paper, or was this an exam paper?
It was an exam paper.
Okay.
For the Master of Wine exams, there are 3 days, 3 mornings of tasting exams where you have 12 wines and you have to analyze and answer a lot of questions about them. And there are 4 theory papers. One is on viticulture, one is on winemaking and finishing of wine, and then paper 3 is the business of wine. So it covers everything from grape prices to taxes to marketing to supply and demand. So the whole sort of gamut of business. And then there's a 4th paper on more philosophical contemporary issues that you have to write and pass as well.
So do you remember what your business paper was? Did you get a choice of topics?
Yes, it's divided into Part A and B, and in Part A you have to answer one of two questions, and then Part B there are 4 questions, you have to select 2. And to be honest, I can't
You don't remember?
Now. I know I did. There was one question I do remember. It was something to do with, and I would have to have the past papers in front of me to give you the exact wording, but it was something to do with, I guess, the long-term success of sort of marketing a country as a whole. I remember I talked quite about New Zealand. It was more about regionality versus brand marketing, or something to that effect.
Okay.
And of course, that was the year I passed theory in 2009. So the world was in deep recession. So we're waiting for that question on sort of the recession, which did not come up in paper 3, but it came up in paper 4. So where you had to have a slight different angle in answering it in terms of looking at from a more contemporary issues rather than a very hard, nuts and bolts business perspective.
And I understand that your dissertation was somehow related to the Champagne region or Champagne wines?
It was. When it comes to dissertation, you have your topic and research proposal has to be approved by the moderating board, but you're free to pick your own topic.
Oh.
And I kind of thought, now I've passed all the exams and the prize is do a dissertation, so let's do something that I'm really passionate about. And so I decided champagne, and not just any champagne, but prestige cuvée. And essentially from talking to, during my studies and also my teaching, from talking to various champagne houses, the question came up a number of times as to, how relevant is the prestige cuvée category? Is it today and going forward? And it was for an MW dissertation, it's really important to have a very tight scope. So I really just looked on premise, and I was looking at the perceptions of prestige cuvée by the U.S. sommelier market, a group of people.
Okay.
So it was very interesting. I mean, some of the key findings really were that, personally, they have a very high opinion of the category, that unfortunately they find it in their work boring because it's largely dominated by 2 brands that we all know and love that self-sell. Self-sell.
Yes.
So they don't really get a chance to, talk and really
teach.
And teach.
Yeah.
And so that was the thing that came through again and again and again, that it's, we don't get a chance to talk about what these brands are, because people come in and they don't look for recommendations, say, I want X or Y of the 2 most dominant brands in that category. So another thing that was interesting from that as well was to see how so many of the sommeliers are much more focused intellectually on the smaller grower champagne.
Yes.
Because there's something that they can teach about. Most of their customers don't really know as much about them.
Right.
And one of the lessons in my sort of findings to bring back to the champagne industry is that, particularly to the larger houses, hey guys, you need to get back and start talking to the sommeliers, engage them in not just the sort of branding, but in the winemaking, in the vineyards, the terroir. So that was an interesting, from the house's perspective, to get kind of a wake-up call that we need to engage more again rather than just have the brand self-sell.
Mary, we're going to go to a short break here. When we come back, we will continue our conversation with Mary Gorman-McAdams, Master of Wine. You're listening to Wine and Dine. We are continuing our conversation with Mary Gorman-McAdams, Master of Wine. She's talking to us from New York City. She is an independent consultant and educator to the wine industry, and she is an educator for the Wine and Spirits Education Trust classes that are held at the International Wine Center in New York City. She's also a wine columnist for the highly popular blog and website, thekitchen.com, and freelance writes and judges about wine. Her specialization is champagne, sparkling wines, Central and Eastern Europe, and of course the business and marketing end of wine. And Mary, I would imagine that the comment you made in closing of the former segment is, I mean, I would think that was really taken to heart. I would hope that fell on ears that were wide open, because I think it's kind of depressing. It's kind of like, as a teacher, if you don't have if you don't have students that are an audience that actually cares or listens to what you have to say, I agree, it's kind of boring and depressing.
It is. No, I think for, talking to a number of the houses since, and also being aware of activities that they are doing in the market, I can certainly see a lot more kind of workshops with sommeliers and getting back into the dirt, back into the vineyard with the champagnes, so that there is this appreciation. And I absolutely love all of the grower champagnes, but I think too that some of the houses champagnes are not getting the appreciation all the time. Again, because they've largely been sort of marketed on brand rather than on their terroir, on the particular vineyard or collection of vineyards. So the champagne category, I think, is very exciting. I think it's become even more exciting today with what I call the democratization of sparkling wine, and there are so many other sparkling wines that have brought people into the category earlier. Yes, and are encouraging people to drink sparkling wine or champagne more often. And I think that augurs well for everybody. Oh, I agree. Not just for any particular sparkling wine or champagne, but everybody in the whole category.
I would think you're probably of the same mindset that I am, that a glass of champagne every day, if I could afford it, I would certainly have champagne every day, and if you can't afford champagne, sparkling wine every day, especially classic method sparkling wine.
Absolutely, and the improvement in the quality and the number of traditional method sparkling wines available has really been tremendous, and there are so many alternatives at less than $25 for really good traditional method sparkling wine. And well, it is lovely too. I mean, there's really nothing quite like champagne and the way it totally fills your mouth both vertically and horizontally. But as you say, we can't afford to drink it every day, and it's nice to know that there are so many other categories, and I particularly like the Cremant category, particularly Cremant di Jura. I think of northern Italy, Franciacorta and Trento. Yes. They're making excellent sparkling wines, and of course here in California, really quite a large number of excellent producers of traditional method sparkling wine. So in many ways we can have a good traditional method sparkling wine, the glass, every day if we like at these price points, which is really great.
I see. I was looking at your recommendations that are currently available on thekitchen.com, and you, the first one that's up, or the most recent one, is you put up the Zardetto Prosecco. Yes.
I mean, as we all know, Prosecco has really taken the world and the U.S. market by storm. And I love Prosecco. I think it's a lovely, fragrant, easy drinking wine. And then recently I tasted this particular Zardetto. It's a single vineyard. It's a particular site on a single vineyard, which is sort of classified by the designation Reeve, and I was bowled over by the depth, the structure, and the intensity of flavor of this wine. And again, it's not an inexpensive Prosecco. It retails for about $24, but it really showed to me the heights that Prosecco can really go, and it can become a really structured, elegant wine.
Is the vineyard named Treventi Rive de Ogliano?
It is. Treventi is the vineyard name, and the Riva degli Ogliani is the particular part on the hill in the vineyard. Okay. So it's a particular site within the Treventi vineyard. It's a small production. Zardetto is a well-known produce a certain brand, and this is a particular small production special wine that they make.
Interesting label.
I think definitely what it is, yes, with the sort of the longitude and latitude of the vineyard, and it's nice to splash out in something special every now and again.
Okay, speaking of special now, and again, especially this time of year, people tend to break out something special. You also have listed as the seventh recommendation that I could find was the Charles Heidsieck Brut Vintage Brut Reserve non-vintage. Yeah, absolutely.
This is, I think, one of it's a little bit under the radar. It's not a brand that's as well known as some others, but it's, to me personally, it's one of the most underrated champagnes that you can buy. And in terms of the realm of pricing for Brut non-vintage, it's relatively good value in the price that you can pay. What I love about Charles Heidsieck is that it's a very nutty, toasty, complex champagne, and one of the reasons for that is that they add a lot more reserve wine to the blend. And maybe I should just roll back a little bit to explain what that is. In Champagne, in making the bread and butter wine, the Brut non-vintage style, typically it's a blend of Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, and Pinot Meunier. And the base wine is typically from, the current vintage. And what the producers do is they add a certain percentage of older wines to the blend when the wine is being assembled before the second fermentation. And the whole principle of those reserve wines for the Brut non-vintage is to make the wine more accessible earlier, to also give it more depth, more complexity from older wines. And for most houses, it's 10, 20%. Charles Heidsieck, they really pushed it to the limit possible, 40%.
Yeah.
So you get this very rich, mouth-filling champagne. Again, as I said, it's a house favorite when I can afford it, and really excellent value. And I think that's one of... Sorry, Glenn?
It's not a big house.
No, it's
relatively speaking.
A small house.
Yeah.
No, it's one of the smaller houses. It belonged to the René Control Group for quite a number of years, and it's now was sold. So it now belongs to a family, and I can't remember the name of them offhand. My apologies, I should though. But again, it's back into being really run as a small, independent house, and very focused on high quality.
But before we run out of time here, I want to get your comment on I was talking recently with a wine writer who really was upset with what had happened to Krug, Champagne Krug, since they were sold. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes, I've read the article. Yeah. Personally, I still think Krug has wonderful definition. My understanding is that they're still fermenting the base wines in oak.
Okay.
So I personally would not be of the same opinion that Krug has gone down in quality. It is very much a standard bearer. It's still very tightly defined, focused. But I think horses for courses. People have different tastes, but I certainly have not tasted any difference in the quality.
Oh, I'm so glad I asked you. Thank you so very much. Well, Mary Gorman-McAdams, this has been a super pleasure meeting you today on Wine and Dine. We thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, and enjoy some lovely champagne over the holidays.
Oh, I hope to. And same to you as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Now you can listen to Wine and Dine Radio while shopping at the grocery store or your neighborhood wine merchant. Wine and Dine Radio can be heard using your wireless internet on your cell phone. You're listening to iWineRadio. iWineRadio is a production of Food Tastes Better with Wine, on the web at iWineRadio.com. Hey guys, I thank you for listening to iWine Radio, and we are still the only wine channel on iTunes Radio. If you go look under iTunes radio icon and scroll down to News and Talk directory, and it's listed alphabetically, click on that and the stream comes up immediately. iWineRadio.com, where you can find links to individual guests. And if anyone's interested in advertising or becoming an underwriter or sponsor, please contact us at iWineRadio.com. We really, really appreciate your support. The more support we get, the more conversations I can have with fascinating people around the world, including you. If you have a story to tell that you'd like to share on iWine Radio, go to iWineRadio.com and contact us, and we'll go from there.